If you are looking to upgrade your vehicle's sound system with a high quality, reliable, and incredible sounding amplifier that features a space-saving form factor and the ability to be used in both car and marine applications, the new JL Audio XDM amplifier line is for you. Not only is this amplifier line packed with features, there are many different models of amplifiers in this lineup that offer a solution for a variety of system designs. Hey there, I'm Mark from the YouTube channel Car Audio Fabrication, here today on behalf of JL Audio to give you an in-depth look into the XDM amplifier lineup. We'll be doing an unboxing and explanation of all the connections and settings and more. Let's get on into it. Now first off, I mentioned that the XDM amplifiers are new, but these might look a little familiar to you. That's because the XDM lineup is very similar to the previous XD-V2 and M series of JL Audio amplifiers. These amplifier lineups have long been known for their high-end performance. And while all of the new XDM models are very similar in terms of power and channels to their predecessors, the XDM line now adds adjustability, making one line of amps a solid choice for either car or marine use. To understand how flexible this lineup of amplifiers is for system design, we first need to take a look at all of the available models. So the XDM amplifier lineup can be broken down into 3 different categories. First off, we have the full range amplifiers. In this lineup is the XDM 200/2, the XDM 400/4, the XDM 600/6, and here I have the XDM 800/8. All of these amplifiers are rated at 75 watts RMS per channel at 4 ohms and 100 watts at 2 ohms. Next up, we have the monoblock subwoofer amplifiers. In this line is the XDM 300/1, the XDM 600/1, which I have here, and the XDM 1000/1. Based on the model number, all of these do their rated power at 2 ohms. So here I have the 600/1, so this is 600 watts RMS at 2 ohms. Finally, there are the full system amplifiers, 3 different options here. The XDM 500/3, which is 75 watts at 4 ohms and 300 watts for the subwoofer at 2 ohms. Then there's the XDM 700/5, the only difference being here from the previous amplifier is the addition of 2 more channels. And then finally there's the XDM 1000/5, which is 75 watts at 4 ohms, 600 watts for the subwoofer at 2 ohms. We're going to talk about the size of these amplifiers here shortly, but really quick I just want to point out that if you are going for a super compact system, you're definitely going to want to look at the system amplifiers. You can definitely get some space savings with the system amplifiers, an example being this picture here, the XDM 1000/5 on top, in comparison to 2 separate amplifiers, the 400/4 and the XDM 600/1. You're going to save quite a bit of size for essentially the same system going with that single system amplifier. So let's see, what can you expect in the box when you purchase an XDM amplifier? And for this, we're going to be looking at one of the full system amplifiers, the 700/5. Open up the cover and we'll see some of the protective packaging on the amplifier. Underneath we find this bundle. This has the JL Audio emblem for the cover plate and an Allen key for taking off the cover plate and making connections. Warranty information and the manual for the amplifier. We'll unpack the amplifier itself. And here we have the XDM 700/5. For the logo, we can stick this to the amplifier, and this is intentionally shipped separately. That way we can put it in different orientations depending on our install. Now right off the bat, I love the way that these amplifiers look. They have this matte black finish that looks refined yet rugged. You'll notice that cosmetically, all of the amplifiers in the XDM lineup look extremely similar, which is great when you're after a cohesive looking install. Dimensionally, all of the amplifiers in the XDM lineup share the same height and width dimension. The height is 2.05 inches or 52 millimeters, and the width from here to back here is 7.09 inches or 180 millimeters. The only thing that changes from amplifier to amplifier is the actual length of the amp. Speaking of size though, check this out. This is the XDM 600/1 subwoofer amplifier. It's only a little bit bigger than the size of my hand. This is a full system amplifier here, the 700/5, a little bit bigger than the size of my hand. And even the largest amplifiers in the XDM lineup, the 800/8 and the 1000/1, share this same footprint. Again, not much larger than 2 of my hands here. So no matter what amplifiers you go with in the XDM lineup, they're going to be nice and compact, which is great for getting a ton of power into a compact space in a system. Before installing an XDM amplifier, we're going to want to read the installation considerations here in the manual. The amplifier has 4 mounting locations, all of which can be accessed without removing the cover panel, and you can see if you look closely that there's a small little plastic grommet on there to isolate the mounting screw from the amplifier. Let's take our cover plate off using the included Allen key. This comes off by removing these 2 screws. And as we lift this cover plate away, and if we look on the back side here, you're going to see that there is a rubber gasketing type material in order to protect all of these connections and settings. Now, in order to connect this amplifier, we first have the typical 12-volt constant, ground, and remote connections here. To determine what size wire and fuse size to use, you're going to want to resort to the manual as this changes from model to model. Something unique about these amplifiers is we don't necessarily need to use a remote turn-on connection to tell this amplifier to turn on. We're going to be talking more about that shortly. Next up, to send musical signal into this amplifier, we have these RCA connections here, and there are also some options for different connections that we can do on this that we'll be talking about in a minute. Next up is a connection for an optional remote level control. We can use this to control the volume of all channels of the amplifier, or we can use it just as a subwoofer volume control. Finally, we have another set of connections that's going to vary based on the amplifier model you have. This is a full system amplifier, so here we have speaker connections and subwoofer connections. Again, you'll want to refer to the manual to see the minimum impedance load and the wire size for the different amplifier models. Next up, I want to go through all the setting options of these amplifiers so that you can see how versatile they are, but really quick, I want to talk about 3 things that you can't really readily see, but they are technology that is built in. Now, first off, the XDM amplifiers are a Class D design, and these have JL Audio's proprietary NextD switching technology built in. This technology results in a clean, powerful, and reliable sound from this Class D amp. Now, you've heard me mention a few times how reliable these amplifiers are, and a big part of this reliability is the advanced rollback protection. These amps monitor their internal temperature, and if an unsafe operating temperature is reached, these amplifiers will protect themselves and roll back the peak power output. You'll know this is occurring if you ever see this status light turn to red. Finally, these amplifiers feature differential balanced inputs. This is a feature that helps prevent input-induced cable noise for optimal sound quality. So a ton of technology is built into the XDM lineup to make these amplifiers be reliable and sound amazing. We did briefly mention this light. This status light is on all of the XDM amplifiers, and it tells us a few different things. Flashing green tells us the amplifier is in its boot up sequence. Green is normal operating conditions, but there are a couple of other color options here which can tell us if something is wrong with the installation or operating conditions of the amplifier. Setting wise, the first option we have here is for a turn on mode. This setting is related to how we want to tell the amplifier to turn on. In its normal setting, which is the preferred option, we're going to use a 12-volt remote turn on lead, which will turn on whenever we want the amplifier to be on. But if we don't have a remote turn on lead to use, there's other options here we can use so that the amplifier knows when it needs to turn on, and the first of which is DC offset. The DC offset sensing will detect the presence of a small DC signal in an OEM audio output to turn the amplifier on. The signal offset setting will turn on by detecting a full range OEM audio signal, and it turns off after the signal is removed within 30 seconds. The turn on mode option is available on all of the different amplifiers in the lineup. Next up is the remote level mode selection, and this is going to be used when we use the optional remote level knob. On a full system amplifier like this, where we have our mids and highs and our subwoofer, with this setting, we can choose whether we want the knob to control the total output of the amplifier by selecting all, or we can change this so that the knob is just used for only the subwoofer channel. On the multi-channel amplifiers like the 800/8 here, you're going to see similar options where you can do all of these channels being affected by the knob, just channels 5 through 8, so that's the last 4 channels here, or in the case of this 8-channel amplifier, just channels 7 and 8. So that gives you some flexibility for turning one of these multi-channel amplifiers into a full system amplifier. On the subwoofer amplifiers, this setting does not exist because if you connect a knob, you're only going to be controlling that one channel. Because the XDM amplifiers are meant to be used in either a car or marine environment, there is also now this new input filter switch. For most applications, you're going to want to leave this in the car setting. Even some marine applications, you might want to leave this in the car setting. But if you are experiencing interference from high current mechanical switches or devices in a marine type application, you would then want to change the switch to remove that noise. Now on the full system amplifiers and the multi-channel amplifiers, you're going to see an option for input mode. On this multi-channel amplifier, if we were to leave this on the 2-channel mode, that means we only need to connect a left and right signal, and it's going to automatically route that left and right signal to all of the output channels of the amp. But if we had a front left and right and a rear left and right, we could switch this to 4-channel mode, and now it will route those to the corresponding channels, and the subwoofer will be fed from a non-fading sum of those 4 channels. Finally, the 6-channel option would be used in an example where we have front left and right, rear left and right, and then a subwoofer output feeding our inputs of this amp. There are similar options on the multi-channel amplifiers, and the amplifier has an explanation printed right on it here. That way there's no confusion. For the subwoofer amplifiers, there is no input mode switch because you're just going to bring in a left and right signal that's going to be summed, or even a mono signal, but you will notice there is another set of RCAs. These are a signal out. That way we can daisy chain and have multiple amplifiers fed the same signal. Something also unique to the subwoofer amplifiers is they feature this switch, which allows us to easily activate an infrasonic filter. Now, in terms of crossovers, we have plenty of options for those on all of these amplifiers. First off, we can defeat the crossovers here on the amplifier by just leaving them in the off setting. That way, if we're using crossovers on something like a digital signal processor or the source unit, we can control them there rather than here on the amp. But if we do need to control our crossovers here on the amp, obviously we can do that as well. There is a ×1 and a ×10 option. In the ×1 setting, that's going to make all of these numbers correspond to their value, whereas if we do ×10, this 50 becomes 500 Hertz, and the 500 Hertz becomes 5000 Hertz. On the full system amplifiers, there are also options to change this crossover from a bandpass crossover to a high-pass crossover. An example being, let's say I'm running an active set of component speakers, so I have the tweeters ran off channels 1 and 2, and I have the component woofers off channels 3 and 4. I could set a high-pass crossover using this. Let's say we use 5000 Hertz because I'm in my ×10 setting for the tweeters. And then having this set at bandpass, it's going to automatically use a 5000 Hertz low pass filter for these outputs. And then I can change this setting to be my high pass setting. So let's say that we want our woofers to play from 120 Hertz up to 5000 Hertz. But we have plenty of options here. If we didn't want to use that bandpass functionality and we just wanted this to be a high-pass filter as well, we could do so. So those crossovers are set at 12 dB per octave. And here on the subwoofer crossover for the low-pass filter, we do have options. Again, we could just negate using this crossover altogether, or we could do 12 dB per octave or 24 dB per octave. We'll see those similar subwoofer crossover settings on the subwoofer amplifiers, and then for the multi-channel amplifiers, you're going to see the high pass and low pass options now on each of these different crossover settings. Finally, each bank of channels has an input sensitivity dial that we can set. If you're not familiar with input sensitivity or gain setting, this is essentially a way to match the source unit's output voltage with our inputs. Now, the best way to go about adjusting the input sensitivity is to use an oscilloscope or another professional grade tool. But just in case you don't have access to those, JL Audio does have a procedure that you can follow here in the manual in Appendix A. Following this procedure here allows you to use a standard multimeter measuring the voltage of the output channels and looking at this table for the value that you want to adjust to. Now I want to give you guys a couple more tidbits of information that I think makes this amplifier lineup unique. So first off, I can't say it enough, with 10 different options for amplifier models in this lineup, there is a ton of flexibility in system design. Something that might not be readily apparent that I always like to tell everyone about is this amplifier here here could be used for a really powerful active front three-way setup. What you would do in that case is you would use channels 1 and 2 to actively drive the tweeters, channels 3 and 4 to actively drive your mids, and then what you can do is you could actually bridge channels 5 and 6 together and bridge channels 7 and 8 together to power a set of powerful woofers for that three-way setup. Each of these banks of channels bridged together would be giving you 200 watts RMS at 4 ohms, which would be substantial for mid-bass. Something else to pay attention to, if you are using one of these optional remote level controls, there are 2 different options to choose from. The HD-RLC would be used in your typical car audio application, but if you have a marine application where you want some weather resistance, you would want to get the MHD-RLC. And for an added degree of customization, what if you don't like this typical black control knob? What if it doesn't really match the rest of the panel where you have this mounted? Well, JL Audio has you covered with this optional aluminum control knob. We just pull this existing knob off and push this new knob on in its place, and now we have that nice brushed aluminum look. So next time you're in need of an extremely versatile and reliable and excellent sounding amplifier for your car or marine application, definitely take a look at the XDM amplifier lineup. Now, a side note, don't forget that you can unlock even more sound processing and tuning capability with a JL Audio Tweak processor. You can find a video all about that device over on my YouTube channel, Car Audio Fabrication, linked down in the video description. Also in the description, you can find a link to the XDM amplifiers on JL Audio's website. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching.